sitting on my doorstep, the people's passing by. They're coming back from getting wrecked. Everybody's high. Saturday night, what a bitch, laying on the lawn. The morning comes to bring the switch after the buzz is gone.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Addictions, the podcast about addictions. I'm your host, David Wagner. If you like the show, be sure to follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/addictionspodcast for links to previous episodes of the show and tons of other extra content like videos, photos, and updates about the show. On this episode, we are going to be talking about smartphone addiction and how it could be changing or affecting our brains. But before we get to our main story, there are a couple of other news updates that I would like to share with you. The first is about a recent study which looked at opioid deaths from overdose, and we're going to be talking about what this study reveals about those at risk. Now, this particular study was conducted by researchers at the Columbia University Medical Center. It was just published in the American Journal of Psychiatry. The research study at Columbia looked at the medical records of over 13,000 adults in 45 states, and it was conducted over a 6-year period from 2001 to 2007. This makes this study one of the largest of its kind, and the results are really quite stunning. Findings from this study show crystal clear evidence that the current opioid epidemic is heavily rooted in the medical community. 2/3 of the 13,000 people studied were diagnosed with having chronic pain and were even prescribed opioid painkillers by their doctors in the year before their deaths. Even crazier than that is the fact that the study also shows that only a scant 4% of the people who died from overdose were diagnosed with having a substance abuse problem. That one really blows me away, as I feel like those numbers should definitely be higher. But then I think about it and I look back at the doctor who was initially prescribing my own opioids. It really isn't a surprise. My doctor was very liberal in prescribing me narcotics and even told me at one point that if I ever did develop physical dependence, that we could treat that. However, once I began calling in my prescriptions a few days early, and it should have been clear that I had a dependence problem, not only did this doctor not treat my addiction, but I was kicked out as a patient. And that just seems incredibly irresponsible to me. But enough about me, back to this study and the findings. Now, the findings also showed that another 2/3 of patients in this study were being prescribed benzodiazepines like Xanax or Valium right along with opioids, which can often be a fatal drug interaction. In fact, Xanax and methadone or Xanax and heroin are the two most common deadly drug combos out there. Researchers of the new study are hoping that their work will help to reverse recent trends in prescription pain medication. But more importantly, their findings tell us that really no one is safe. Both baby boomers and millennials are equally at risk when it comes to developing an opioid drug problem. This is a problem that has seeped into nearly every facet of society, and if we do not get something done soon, it will only continue to grow. The next thing I wanted to share with you before we get to the main story is about a recent murder that happened over Thanksgiving this year in the city of Minneapolis. This one is actually pretty wild. A woman named Anina Marie Hare, age 47, is currently facing second-degree murder charges in the death of Edward Califf, age 69. In an article from the Minneapolis Star-Tribune, police say that Califf was invited to Hare's home for Thanksgiving, but before dinner was served, Edward Califf took out his stash of cocaine and began smoking it. According to investigators, police, and court documents, Hare was offended that Califf did not ask permission to use the drugs, nor did he offer any of the drugs to Hare herself. She then reportedly would not let Caliph leave the home and was blocking him from leaving by brandishing a large butcher knife. Caliph then yelled to neighbors to call police and also broke a window, presumably in an effort to escape. Hours later, Hare called police 4 times, reportedly telling the dispatcher that she, quote, put his ass to sleep, end quote. When the authorities arrived, they found Caliph face down near the broken window. He was then taken to the hospital where he was pronounced dead. Anina Marie Hare told police that she had approached Caliph and a struggle for the knife had ensued. During this struggle, Hare claims that she took Caliph by the shoulders and sort of fell on top of him. But this doesn't really explain the strange calls that she made to the police, and the autopsy clearly shows that Edward Caliph died due to homicidal violence. It should really be no surprise that all sorts of death rates actually spike around the major holidays. Everything from car accidents and heart attacks to murders. During the holidays, we generally have more people out and about on the roads, thus increasing the likelihood of car accidents, and the stress from the entire ordeal can apparently sometimes be enough to drive people right over the edge. And for our third and main story of the show, smartphone addiction, or really mobile device of any kind addiction, and how this new addiction to technology may be changing our brains in ways we have yet to even fully understand. And this is something we've talked a little bit about before. One of our recent episodes was called Digital Heroin, and we talked about the dangers of mobile device addiction, which you can always go back to and listen to if you missed it on our website. Anyways, a recent poll done by a nonprofit group called Common Sense Media suggests that nearly 50% of teens feel they are addicted to their mobile devices. Another recent poll done by the Pew Research Center this year in 2017 showed that 77% of Americans now own smartphones, which is up 35% from 2011. That statistic should really come as no surprise because smartphones, social media, and just access to the internet in general is becoming a more and more crucial part of our society. So what's wrong with being a smartphone junkie? Well, clearly there are some pretty major issues and signs that overuse of our mobile devices poses certain health risks. According to the United States Center for Disease Control, mobile phone use is at least in part to blame for the distracted driving epidemic that kills an estimated 9 people every day and injures over 1,000 a day. But it isn't just the issue of distracted driving, it's distracted walking as well. Studies have shown that roughly 40% of pedestrians who enter traffic during a don't walk signal are usually on their phones. There are even physical symptoms associated with mobile device addiction, things you might not even notice. Things like text neck, which is a cramping or stabbing pain that comes after looking down at your phone too long. There are many others like poor posture, which can often affect your spine and even your respiratory functions, and this can in turn lead to much more serious physical problems further on down the road. Research even shows that the blue light emitted by most cellular phones can disrupt the production of melatonin in the brain and really screw with our sleep cycle. Just like other addictions, our growing addiction to mobile devices could indeed be rewiring our brains in ways we may not fully grasp or understand. Many people who are already undergoing rehabilitation and recovery from mobile device or video gaming addictions, they show a lot of the same type of rewiring in the brain, just like we see in those recovering from other substances like alcohol or heroin. And this evidence suggests that mobile device addiction is truly on the same level as just about any other substance abuse disorder out there. And when we remember how many people now own smartphones, this becomes even more worrisome. There is evidence that suggests that we even experience physical and mental withdrawal symptoms when we cannot use or have access to our mobile devices for an extended period of time. Studies done on many different age groups and many different groups of people have all shown the same results with respect to these physical and mental withdrawal symptoms. These are general symptoms like anxiety and depression, even insomnia. Many of them are the same symptoms of withdrawal you would experience when detoxing from other drugs, including heroin. And just like with other drugs and addictions, mobile device addiction is often a result of an underlying turmoil or stress in one's life. And addressing these underlying issues that people have can often be the biggest part of freeing oneself from the shackles of any addiction. I really want to stress here that I don't think it is the manufacturers of the smartphones to blame, or even the smartphones themselves. People need to find a proper balance, just like with anything else. Moderation is key, and if you simply cannot moderate your mobile device use in a healthy manner, then you need to seek help and address any underlying issues you have or reasons that you need to escape the real world so often. Just like with any other addiction, there is a lot of help available for those that want it. Like I said earlier, social media and mobile devices have become a crucial, integral part of our modern society, and they're probably going to be around for a long time to come. This is why it is important, now more than ever, to educate ourselves about this exact issue. We all need to find our own balance of reality in the mobile device world, which in its own way is becoming more and more a necessary part of everyday life. You've been listening to Addictions, the podcast about addictions. I'm David Wagner, and I want to thank you all so much for listening. And don't forget that if you want to listen to any of the previous episodes, you can find them all, along with tons of other cool stuff at our website, which is www.addictionspodcast.wordpress.com. Again, it's addictionspodcast.wordpress.com. And if you really love the show and want to help support what we do, visit patreon.com/addictions to learn how you can help. Again, that's patreon.com/addictions. And as always, never quit quitting.
Sundays you prayed Uncle John, you poisoned yourself last night. Mary slapped your friend Tom, you got in a hell of a fight. Monday comes and it's back to work, the week seems so damn long. The weekend's past, you're still a jerk after the buzz is gone.